Well, General Martin Dempsey, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, wrapping up a trip to Afghanistan, saying the Taliban will be a long-term threat. General Dempsey telling the Associated Press he believes the Taliban will be fighting for control of some regions in Afghanistan for years to come. He also went on to say after international forces complete their withdrawal at the end of next year, as it is planned, the Afghan government will need to reach some sort of political accommodation with the Taliban. Joining us on set today, retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Martha McSally. She served in Afghanistan, where she became the first woman in U.S. history to command a combat aviation squadron and flew hundreds of missions yourself.
225 in Afghanistan.
Just want to make sure we get that on the record because that's very important. So, Colonel, it's great to have you on
Thanks
set with
for having
us.
me on, Jenny.
Before we get into Afghanistan, I'd love to hear your opinion about what's going on there. Why did you choose the career that you chose?
Well, mostly because they told me that I couldn't be a fighter pilot. At the time, it was against the law for women to be fighters. You know, when I went into the Air Force Academy, and I just couldn't believe, I just thought that was ridiculous. So I got very motivated to become a fighter pilot just because they told me that I couldn't.
And now looking back on your career, how do you feel about all
Well, I've
that
had some
done?
extraordinary opportunities to serve where many women before didn't get to serve, again, to fly and to command in combat. There's no greater privilege. And so I'm very grateful for those who went before me, the pioneers who went before me, and the opportunities that I had. And 26 years in the uniform, so.
Just so our viewers know too, we were showing some pictures of you. That's your plane.
Yeah, it is. Yep, it's got a 30mm gun on it, and we do close air support. It's a single-seat attack aircraft. So we show up when Americans are on the ground under fire, needing help with very close proximity, usually to civilians or the enemy and the friendlies, very close, very strategic circumstances, and we deliver firepower to save their lives.
It's incredible technology. It's one of the arguments that some have for having concern about our withdrawal in Afghanistan because the Afghanistan forces,
Right.
the local forces, do not have that type of support.
Right.
Looking back at your time in Afghanistan and a time in this country where there seems to be some conflicting emotions about our time spent there, what do you think about the mission?
Well, we got to remember that Afghanistan is in a very strategic location. We have a deeply nuclear capable divided Pakistan to the east. We have the most sophisticated state sponsor of terror to the west who's trying to get a nuclear weapon. And even though we're in our 12th year, it is in our national interest to make sure that Afghanistan is stable, secure, and doesn't become a failed state. So when we transition out of the American forces, it is really up to the Afghan government and the Afghan military security forces to make sure that they're providing for their people, that they deal with the corruption, and they provide safety and security for their citizens. The Taliban will be there. I mean, it's a very complex situation. The idea is to get it to be more of like a police action instead of a full-blown counterinsurgency.
Do you believe now that the Taliban on the ground pose the same threat that they did at one time to the United States?
Well, it's been sort of waxing and waning, but I will say one of the biggest challenges is that they have a safe haven in Pakistan, and that's one of the things that has to be addressed. So we have done extraordinary things. We've spent a lot of blood and treasure. Many have sacrificed their lives in order to provide the opportunity for the Afghan people to secure and have a stable force for their own people.
Pakistan is a separate issue almost
Right.
completely, although very much linked to Afghanistan
Right.
and our national security.
Right.
One of the programs that we look at in Pakistan is the drone program.
Right.
And you have some experience with this type of program, not necessarily in Pakistan, but through the military.
Right.
That's different than the CIA's program through Pakistan. So can you tell us a little bit about what is the state of the drone program right now, how effective it is?
Sure. If we're talking about there's terrorist individuals that are in high-level positions that are planning and executing operations or financing operations, there's a couple of questions because this gets all mixed up a lot in the media. Is it legal for us to be targeting them? And I would argue yes. That's for a separate discussion. Is it good policy for us to be targeting them? And again, I would argue yes. If we're looking at an enemy that is targeting Americans and American interests abroad, then the question is, if we're going to target them, how are we going to do it? And I will tell you from my military career and running the targeting program in Africa, having a remotely piloted vehicle overhead, which we call a drone, which is, it's nothing like, a drone makes it sound like they're just flying around targeting people, but a remotely piloted vehicle overhead that can give real-time intelligence with very low collateral damage, that can abort at the last minute if needed to, and we know this is exactly who we're going after. It's a very laborious process. That is a good weapon to choose as opposed to a missile or a fighter aircraft or SEALs going in to minimize the threat to Americans.
Real quick here, what do you think about that program coming completely underneath the military umbrella? I know there's still some questions about whether or not the Pakistan program will be run by the CIA, but that seems to be a point of contention, whether the Pentagon does that program or whether the CIA does.
Well, the military program is involved in Africa and Yemen and other places, and I personally believe that the program in Pakistan needs to also roll under the same processes. It's very laborious and very detailed for us to get to the point where we are sure we've positively identified a target and that we actually have permission to strike with very low collateral damage. We've got a detailed process we've gone through. It's very proven to be effective. So I think the CIA program, it's time to move it under the military.
A little different than the movies. It's nice to talk to someone that's actually been through it, flown, also dealt with the unmanned aerial vehicles.
Exactly.
Better than drones, right? We should use that term.
Yes.
Colonel, it's great to have you.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank
Good
you
to be
so
here.
much. Look forward to having you back.
Thanks.